world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coaches Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coaches Why.
Welcome back to another Coach Why podcast. We have a very special guest in the house today, Coach Erha, Agnes from Agnes College. He is the head basketball coach out there. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kason. It's nice to talk to you for the first time in person. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. No more text messages and no more delay game, if you would. Right? We get to come in here and finally get after it. So I'm excited to have you and talk a little bit about basketball today. So I don't know if I mentioned to you off air, but kind of how we start all of these episodes is letting everybody know a little bit about yourself. So, and specifically before we talk about the coaching side of things. So go ahead and let myself and everybody else know kind of where you grew up, and then when you got involved in sports, but basketball in particular, and when that process kind of started for you.
Okay. I'm born in Connecticut. I grew up my entire life in Unionville, Farmington, Connecticut, suburb of Hartford. I've been playing sports as long as I can remember, all of them. In Connecticut, New England, soccer was the first one. It's a big one. Basketball came around. I had a basketball hoop in my driveway from as long as I can remember, and I just, I always, from a basketball perspective, like my earliest memories of playing are me in my driveway, pretending to be Larry Bird, pretending to age myself real quick, but pretending to hit these, fadeaways over the backboard, out of the corner of the floor. But I've always had sports in my life. Makes an interesting kind of segue to me talking about coaching, though, because it wasn't a straight path for me. I have a very unconventional path to coaching. So personally, back to that piece, I spent the first 22 years of my life in Connecticut, had been in Massachusetts for the last 20 years or so, up until last year when I moved here for this job with my family. Been in Massachusetts with my wife and our 7-year-old kids and our 2 dogs, and now we're down here in Atlanta, and it's been an interesting ride by way of that. But the basketball piece, I didn't grow up like playing outside of rec until I was in high school. I didn't play travel basketball, that sort of thing. So I always felt personally like I was a bit on the outside looking in of that. And that led to me just kind of like, I just stopped playing basketball when I was in high school. I said, I don't like my experience. Looking back in retrospect, that was probably more about me than my experience that I was having at the time. But it is what it is. And I didn't touch basketball again individually until I started coaching when I was 30. And that was just a matter of, I took a different path in life for a while, and when I went back to Connecticut to visit my family for Christmas break, I watched one of my younger cousins playing high school basketball, and I did not love the experience he was having. I did not think his team was getting the experience that I would like to have had, or that he would like to have had. And so I went back home to Massachusetts after the break, and I was like, I'm gonna find a job. Stupidly thought I'd get at least like a freshman coaching job right away. Regardless, forgetting entirely that we were in season at that point on top of that. And I started coaching a co-ed rec 3rd and 4th grade, 8-year-old, or 3rd and 4th grade, co-ed rec team, not 8, at that point in time. And that was transformative, honestly. Between my time away from sports and how I developed as a person, not as an athlete, not as a coach, and then my experience coming up through the ranks of coaching, from having to not be a coach but a teacher first, like having to really teach these kids everything.
Absolutely.
Really transformed who I am as a coach today, and I think I'm a better coach because of it. I don't think I would have been as good at connecting with people the way that I am had I just gone in with an expectation that, you're a high school player, you're a college player, whatever it is, and you should know X, Y, and Z. At this point, I don't assume any of my players know anything. And sometimes that feels true, and it makes it a lot easier, though, to be able to find those gaps and connect with them, I think, than at least for me personally.
Yeah.
So I actually think that, there's a few things I want to go back and touch on, but I think that particularly the teaching the youth side of things, I truly think that it helps with breaking, whether it's specifically technique, but I think the game in general. Sorry, I don't know why the heck I just started there. But I really think it actually helps you kind of break the game down in a way that you have to, right? You're teaching young kids. They have to understand the game and they have to understand the technique. So actually it's funny because yesterday at practice, I had one of our other coaches talk technique, and he was saying, have anybody ever shot a bow and you're stretching? And that's what you're doing when you're taking this shot. And for me, I never thought of it like that on the level of breakdown. And we're teaching high school kids this. So, and I talked to him after, I was like, dude, that was great. And he's like, bro, when you're teaching youth, you have to do things that make sense for these kids, right? So I guess going back to what you said, I really think that it does help you develop in seeing, whatever the technique is in basketball, right? Whether it's a free throw or whatever, right? I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. Whatever technique is in your basketball game, it does help. So I really can appreciate that you, for one, started there, but I think I'm sure there's still some little things that you might even, like you said, you assume some of these people don't know what the heck they still don't know, right? So maybe taking some of those things that you taught in 3rd and 4th grade, maybe developing, obviously you had to develop, but just some of those little word phrases, right, about something else, right? A visual that you might show a 3rd and 4th grader might be the same visual you might still speak on to a adult, right, or a high schooler, whatever it is. So I can appreciate that you started there, and I'm sure you can as well, as you said. So I know you mentioned as well that you stopped playing in high school, and you didn't touch a basketball again until you were, I think you said 30. So was that something? And I am jumping ahead here, but I'm just going to do it anyways because it's a perfect segue. For one, was that ever something were you nervous or scared to maybe, I know you said you wanted to start, like you said, freshman, be the coach of a freshman team or JV or something of that nature. Were you ever nervous, I don't have playing experience in high school or college, and then, developing into a high school coach or even a college coach, knowing that you didn't have that as a player? Was that ever something that kind of stood on your mind whenever you took jobs of higher levels?
No. I think I'm too stupid to have that. Honestly, I think I'm too. It's a combination of being too dumb to realize the things that I don't know, and too confident in my ability to figure things out on the fly. It wasn't. At no point in time do I feel like it was a fake it till you make it situation. I don't feel like it was that, but there was just a substantial amount of learning that I was doing and ingesting when I started. My first one was just that little rec league team, and then I was like, well, I gotta keep coaching. So I went and found a summer league that was local and coached this, another it was probably 4th or 5th grade summer league team that year. And then the next year I was got a 7th, 8th grade travel basketball coaching position. And then that summer I got 2 summer league teams in that league. And I was like, I just need more. And I was trying to attend as many coaches clinics as I could. If this is 12 years ago, 13 years ago now. So it wasn't quite, the way that you have today where you could go on Instagram or YouTube and get access to everything under the sun at the drop of a hat, which is awesome. I don't knock that at all.
Absolutely.
I'm a better coach because of it today.
Yeah.
But it was I really had to seek out ways to increase my knowledge. And I didn't even just mean from an X's and O's perspective, though that was certainly a piece of how do you put together a program? How do you make this thing be what you want it to be? And it's because of those situations. When I say too stupid to be afraid, I was also smart enough to know that I didn't know nearly what I needed to know, and I needed to find people who knew more than me. Going to college
Absolutely.
practices, and watching college practices. I'm sure some of the coaches that I came to watch their practices have questions about me as a human being, because I didn't ask a lot of questions. I was like, I want to know what you do. I don't know what questions even I really want to ask yet at this point in time. Like, I just
Right.
want to watch what you do, and then being smart enough down the road too to realize what applies to you, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. There are things that some coaches do and they do so well that I just would never ever do because they don't work for me. I think that's such an important piece of how I developed. I mean, I was so fortunate in the ability to develop as a coach out of the spotlight. Like, I didn't have expectations on me. I got the year after that, I got my first head coaching job at a varsity level, and even then, it was a charter school out on the Cape that had 2 years of varsity experience before I got there. Or no, I was taking over in the second year, and they won 4 games the year before, and it was nobody was looking at them. We're Division
Yeah, of
4,
course.
Mass Cape Cod charter school. We don't even have our own gym. So whatever I did there was going to be just something that I could keep doing and growing. And then, we built that program into something that went to the state tournament 4 out of my last 5 years there. And it was, a really fun place to be, to kind of have that ability to just be anonymous a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes people want to jump right to the top, and there's just an expectation that comes with that as well that you're not necessarily ready for, even if you've come up as a player, as a grad student, and you've had those experiences. Once you take over, be it the high school level or the college level, the JUCO level, whatever it is, as the head coach, like, there's an expectation that you really don't know how to handle that until you get the opportunity to handle that. And so to be in that position where I could do that and make my mistakes and not have it really,
Yeah, be
Fact-
visually
was really beneficial to me. Yeah.
absolutely.
So obviously, as you mentioned about all the coaching clinics, and you had to take the leap of really having to do your own homework, right? And I think that even no matter how developed you are, right, Bill Self or you're my goodness, why can't I think of coaches' names right now? I'm thinking of the girls' basketball side of things, right? UConn coach. I just had this conversation not too long ago. You're Gino, thank you. Yeah, yes, REM. I was wanting to say his last name, but yeah, Gino. And just in general, right? It could be anybody. You as a coach, right? You always have to develop and always have to evolve, right? Not only for when you started the game of coaching, when you started coaching X amount of years ago. Whenever we'll get into that, but as the sport evolves, as these kids evolve, you have to put yourself in those positions, right, to be a better coach. So I can appreciate that you took the time to figure out how the heck do I even be a coach, but now you had to do that at a much higher level, from high school to college and all that stuff. And I think that as we develop, if you get to a point where you think that you know everything, I think you should probably step away, right? And that's just how I feel.
I'm confident that I know more than I used to, but I'm also, that's why we have film. That's why we film our practices. Like, I don't even necessarily know, like, literally what happened yesterday. And I don't say that like I forgot it. Like, I might have a question about something that I need to go back and look on, and then, okay, so what do we do with that? And, again, each player is different, and it's a constant puzzle. It's one of the things I absolutely love about coaching. Like, the fluidity of the experience and the puzzle aspect of it is one of the things that really draws me to what it is. So, just
Absolutely. Yeah.
constantly, you have to have that learner, that what's the growth mindset is what you have to have as a coach to be successful.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned you have to, you said that I wrote it down like this, but you have to know your strengths, right? Like you said, how some things work for one coach versus another coach. And I've said this, and I've actually had this conversation with other coaches here, but also just in general as a coach. I'm assuming you have some. I'm assuming you have assistant coaches, right? I don't know if you do, but kind of knowing maybe your strengths as a head coach or just as a coach in general, and then having somebody who comes in who might have a little bit more strength in other areas is really helpful for you, not only for probably peace of mind, but also as you're trying to develop a program, because like whatever you're not good at, they can come in and be great at, or whatever the case is, right? And so I think that having assistant coaches and them having strengths maybe to your weaknesses is how a program not only finds success relatively early, but also long term wise, right? Because you have to continue to work together, and obviously you'll get better, they'll get better in their weaknesses, and that's how coaching staffs are really, brought to power, if you would, in whatever sport they're doing. In my opinion, on kind of how, what I might have struggled in as a first year coach versus now I'm trying to develop into a longer term coach is knowing that I need assistants who can kind of pick up where I'm lacking, if you would.
Yeah, I think that's really important to be able to know your blind spots and be able to fill in those gaps with people who can better the program and build the program. Like my assistant, I'm extraordinarily lucky. I have one assistant who does too much work already for the amount he gets paid, and I'm always trying to be cautious of how much we ask of him because of that. Like I'm one of the things I think about not having gone through the grind of coming up through college as an assistant is that I don't have this expectation that my assistant's time is my time and that whatever they're getting paid, they should be grateful for it. My understanding is you don't get paid enough for what we ask of you already. I don't want to ask more of you. He wants to give more because he wants to do this, and I get it, and I'll always allow him to make that decision, but I'm not trying to send him, across the Southeast 4 times a week so that he can go scout games for us and recruit players, because we don't pay him enough to do that. And I don't need him to be here till 11 o'clock at night if I've got calls, because he's not paid to do that.
Right.
He will be here sometimes because that's who he is and what he wants to do. But I'm cautious of that. But from a skill perspective, absolutely. And I don't want yes men, yes women. I don't want yes people around me. I don't want people who just are an echo chamber telling me that I'm great and everything we do is right. I want them to say, hey, I do agree like with this or that, but we can do this here. And as I was saying, my assistant, I'm very lucky. He's a former Division I player, Division II player, played internationally, and he's 6'5", and I am not 6'5", and so he's got this post experience, like in a way that I don't have, and I can teach the post. I understand the post, but I don't have the experience of having done it. I can't give my post players that knowledge, that experience, and he very much can, and I'm very thankful to have him because of that, and for many other reasons, if I'm honest. But it's a thing that I can't do, so I have someone who can do it, and that's great.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's definitely a few things I want to touch base on about not only him, but also, as you developed as a coach when it comes to maybe some of your techniques or schematics or some of those things within your program. But I do want to jump back a little bit to asking about kind of your experience. I know that you said that you didn't really have a lot of you didn't really play in high school, right? That's what you mentioned to me. But was there ever a coach that made an impact on your life? No, this could be whether when you were playing or maybe as a mentor, something of that nature. But was there ever a coach who made an impact on your life? And if so, why? And who?
There are a few that I'll go through quickly. My dad was my first coach, and I think that was he coached me in everything. Baseball, soccer, basketball, and he also had this understanding of when it was time for him to step aside and be an assistant coach so that people who knew more could add more to the thing. I'm in that interesting spot right now where my kids only play soccer at the moment. They don't care about sports. It's wild. I love it. It's fantastic. It's so weird. They're going to be who they are, and I'm very happy about that. And man, do they not care about basketball. It's hilarious. My wife comes and brings them to the games, and if she brings them to the games, they've got coloring books, they got their tablets, they've got enough snacks to make it through the game. We had a good game right before break, and I was like, "Ooh, did you guys watch any of the game today?" No. All right, whatever. It's fine. But yeah, so I'm coaching them in soccer, and I want to have that experience personally, but I also want them to be able to have an understanding of, what that looks like to have somebody who's there and isn't just doing it because they have to, but really cares about being there for them. So I think that my dad really gave me a good foundation with regard to that. And from a playing perspective, I very honestly, the coach who had the biggest impact on me as a player, I never played for. The first time I tried out for travel basketball was in 7th or 8th grade, and he cut me. And he wrote me a letter in addition to cutting me and explained what I needed to improve at, explained why, and he kept the people that he kept above me. And if I'm honest, I don't agree still to this day. But 100%, the letter that he gave me was a thing that I don't personally still have the letter. I don't believe it might be at my parents' house still somewhere. But the message of the letter, the reasoning behind the letter and the impact of the letter, I carry today 100%. It was something he didn't need to do, and he did, and it really, I think even before I was thinking about coaching, that really resonated with me in a way that was just how I want to treat people in general. And it was, I had blind spots as a player because I hadn't come up through that it was, again, just rec ball with my dad being the coach for the most part. And then, he wasn't a basketball player, so there's only so much there. I learned a lot in that letter, honestly, and it was awesome. His name's Bob O'Connor, Coach O'Connor. His kids, I was good friends with his kids in school. His son, awesome, ended up going working at ESPN. His other son ended up working and coaching the basketball team in the basketball program back at the high school we all went to. He just retired from that a few years ago when his second kid was born, I think. But Bob O'Connor, honestly, had a transformational effect on me as a coach before I was even thinking about it. And it was transformational as a player, not as much as anybody would have liked in the end, it turns out. But that moment, that was it for me. That's the biggest effect anyone had in my playing time as a coach. And I played beyond that, and I can't even remember some of the names of the coaches I had after that. But I'll never forget that. And as an actual coach, the person who has had the most effect on me, probably Tobin Anderson, who is at Iona right now. He was at St. Thomas Aquinas in New York when I first met him. Oh God, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago now, maybe 8 even. Back when I was going to all these coaches clinics, and I went to the Wooten Clinic down in DC, which is just such an outstanding coaches clinic for basketball coaches. And I had a number of people that I talked to there in general, but everyone that spoke at the event, I reached out to an email to thank you after the fact. I did that with everybody that I get to see speak, or that I can actually get contact info for. And I'm also one of those people who's just ask. If they say no, what happens? You already didn't have the thing that you asked for, so give it a shot. So I was always asking, hey, if there's a chance that I can come check out a practice, or I see that you play near where I live and I can come attend the game, or maybe come in early, watch your shoot around, that sort of thing. I would love to be able to. I'm just looking, find as much experience as I can, get as many opportunities as I can. Tobin was, man, I had coaches who were down the street effectively from where I lived, and it was a struggle to get into practice. Tobin opened his doors. He said, so they came and played, Stack played URI, which was maybe an hour and a half from where I lived in Massachusetts, at the beginning of that season after that summer clinic. And he said, yeah, come on down. And I thought he was just going to comp a ticket. And I showed up early, and he brought me down for shoot around. He brought me down for into the locker room. He had me watch their pregame prep. He had me sit behind the bench, and I was like,
wow.
It was, on the one hand, I was like, oh my God, I'm just sitting here on like a Division I floor today. Like, this was not my expectation. But on the other hand, and this, by the way, this was when Danny Hurley was the head coach of URI too.
Oh,
And I didn't
okay.
know he'd become Danny Hurley, UConn,
UConn, yeah.
championship coach. But I knew that he was Danny Hurley at the time. On top of that, like, the Hurley family is well known. So this was just like a Make-A-Wish experience, if I'm honest.
Gotcha.
It was transformational in watching how they prepare for their games, what that looks like, what the way they communicate with their players before the games, how concise they prepare their notes for their players versus their notes for themselves. Just what the intentionality is behind all of it. Nothing happens really by accident at that level. And I don't necessarily know that I thought it did, but I get it, having the curtain drawn back in that experience was just, it was awesome. And then, he's a friend still today, and I have loved watching him grow his career. The biggest upset in history a few years ago. At Fairleigh Dickinson over Purdue. But just, he's always been somebody who I can reach out to and ask a question. And again, I'm always somebody I will ask when I have something, but I'm also, conscious of people's time, and I try not to too often, but probably less than I should in respect. But he's always there, and he's just
awesome.
The amount of times that I've been to 3 or 4 of his games and had that experience with him, and it's just has wholly transformed how I see what the job is. And I can't, honestly, I thank him all the time, but I can't thank him enough, honestly.
No, that's outstanding to have a coach who's willing to have you come in. And I know I like the Make-A-Wish comment, but the idea that he was willing to have you, not only, I don't know if that happens a lot, but the fact that he was able to, he opened his door for all of that for you to be just to learn, right, is absolutely shows his character, right, and shows who he is as a person. And so I can, it sounds like, and you can tell the passion in your voice about that experience, how much that made an influence on who you are as a coach today. And let me ask you this. So what was your timeline? And I'm going to go back to him a little bit, but I'm going to have you answer that a question I have after this answer, because it'll kind of put it all together in my head puzzle-wise. So how long have you been coaching, and then what was your timeline like? So when did you, I know you started around the age of 30, right? And I think you said that was kind of when you got back into the coaching world. And then you started at the 3rd and 4th grade, like club, rec team, things like that. So what was your timeline? When was that, and where did you start essentially, and how did you get to Agnes?
So right here in the next week or two, it's going to be 13 years since I started it, because it was, okay. I was 30, I'm 43 right now. It was going back to Christmas, so it was after Christmas I came back, and so it was in January that I would have started coaching that team. So it's been 13 years since I started, period. I did that thing for that season. Like I said, I know all these things by heart in a way that, I don't know, seems scary if I'm honest, but I know my timeline very well, because I was also conscious of it. I did the summer league thing that summer. I got the 7th, 8th grade town travel ball program the following year with Marion Recreation in Marion, Massachusetts, which was another, that was such a beneficial situation there. Jody Dickerson was the rec director in Marion, and Jody was just another one of those people I'm not here without Jody. He was so generous in allowing me to develop, not just program's a generous term for what we had there, but a program, but then also, like, he let me do summer camps there. And so I got all this, like, experience teaching and coaching kids all throughout the year. Wasn't making any money off of this. Like, I didn't even get paid for the travel coaching position. It was all in a position where I didn't have kids still at that point in time, and my time was my time, and I could do whatever I wanted still. You got to develop a summer camp and go through that process of having that experience, which looks very good on my resume. Like, I'll be honest, but also the actual experience itself was just every time I got to go out there and coach, I got a chance to be better. Like every single day. And it was awesome. Like those teams were terrible, if I'm honest, because that school district had an extremely good high school program and an extremely good travel program that I didn't know existed, because I had just moved to the area, and they put a posting up like looking for a travel coach for the rec team, for the town team. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, let's get in on that. And then I found out that this was definitely going to be like the B, C level team, because the kids who were like, that town had a team that a kid played D1, and won the state championship as a freshman. Like he was,
Okay.
They were very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't have that kid, but I had all these kids who were in a very similar situation to me, where they were very excited about the opportunity that they had in front of them, that wouldn't have been available otherwise, that they were getting a chance to go out there and be better and to be able to enjoy this in a way that, wasn't going to be allowed for them to, if Jody Dickerson weren't there to give this opportunity to all of us. And I worked at Marion Rec for 5 years, I think. The next year, I went and got I got a freshman coaching position at Middleborough High School, and that was in the summer that I got that. And then in September, the AD at Sturgis West, Bridgenon, emailed me and said, hey, are you still interested in applying for the varsity boys position we have here? And I said, oh, yes. And so I interviewed with him, and he offered me that. And so I had to pass on the freshman job for the varsity job. And that was the start of that. And Bridge was another one of the people in my life who Bridge gave me freedom. Bridge gave me freedom he trusted me to make the right decisions, not just for me, but for my kids, for my players, for the school. We created something that wasn't there, and that's what we created with the travel team. And then I realized at that point, that was how I was going to have to define myself as a coach going forward, because I did not have this college experience to draw from. I did not have these college connections to push myself with. So I had to be someone who could build programs. That was going to have to be like the head of my resume. So, we took over that program. It was me. I always talk about our programs as we. Like, I don't like talking about myself. But I like talking about the journey. But if I had to talk about me right now, like whenever we talk about this journey, I still feel like I'm talking about the teams, like I want to talk about. But yeah, like
humbleness. I like the humble, by the way. It's a weird thing.
Yeah. I said 4 wins. They had 2 wins the year before we got there. That's what it was. They had 2 wins, and we only won we missed the tournament by a game that year, my first year. And then actually, never mind. I'm not going to tell you what the wins were by that season. I cannot remember. I'm realizing that I cannot remember that specifically. But I was there for 7 years, and while I was there for 7 years, I was coaching the travel team with Marion still for at least 4 of those years, maybe 5 of those years. And that was before I had kids still too. So there would be days where I would be out, and you probably don't know the geography of Massachusetts and Cape Cod, and that's fine. But
I don't.
I would be out on Cape Cod coaching, and I would be driving like an hour plus back to like race to the gym for a travel practice 2 days a week, and just trying to make this thing work. Because again, just the more chances I got to coach, the better I got to be. And just even if it wasn't, I was better today. Like I saw something that I didn't see before that's going to help me be better down the road. Eventually, my children were born. My wife got pregnant. Our children were born, and I was like, oh, I can't keep coaching this thing for free and having it take up more time. It's already going to be hard enough. We have twins, and it's already going to be hard enough on us with me coaching the high school team. But I'm very fortunate. My wife Sarah is extremely generous with her time with me as well, and what she allows for me to be able to build here within this career. Because she for whatever reason, she's always believed in me. I'm not sure why, but she has. As a basketball player, as a basketball coach, as a person, but yeah, she really she saw this, she saw the belief in it, and we had to say goodbye to the Marion Rec stuff, which was too bad. But after that, I wanted to get a little closer to home as well. And the head coaching job for the Wareham girls team opened up, and I lived in Wareham, and it was 3 minutes from my house instead of 45 minutes to the Cape. And it was really convenient, and it was an opportunity to get to a program that had fallen off in recent years but had been historically successful. And it was a chance to work with girls, which I hadn't done yet other than at camps. So I took that, and my AD there, Ed Rodriguez, was another person who just believed in me and trusted in me and allowed me to do my thing. And he was my biggest cheerleader while I was there, and we were terrible. We were terrible. I took over. It was the COVID year. So we're walking in on that, and I have 12 players in my program, and that includes 8th graders because they got 8th graders at the high school. 5 of them were 8th graders of my 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was not great.
Sorry, just the way you said that was so funny. I'm sorry.
No, you are. If you ain't gonna laugh, you gonna lose your mind.
Yeah, that's fair.
We struggled through that year tremendously. We had parents with expectations that were so out of whack with what was on the floor, what we were able to do with these players, and Ed was there every day. Even if honestly, it didn't affect me very much that first year, but Ed was there every day to be like, hey, you're doing fine. Like, I keep telling these parents, like, we could have Brad Stevens out here. There's not, like, we're not going to do it. Like, what's he going to do with them? Like, yeah. And, we grew some stuff there. They're in a much better position today. I won't say it's because of what we did. I was only there for 2 years. I hope that we put them in a better place. A big thing about me as a coach, I want to try to leave it better than I found it. I think that's important. So hopefully we left it better than we found it. But, I was there for 2 years, and then during that period, I had applied to be an assistant at Bristol Community College. And I had started applying for college jobs. I also realized in the process, you need to have a college degree to be a college coach. And I did not have that. I went to college for 4 years. I did not have a degree. That's a different conversation. Fair. That's a different podcast. Don't worry about that. So once I came to that conclusion and that this was like the path I wanted to go on, I had to go back and get my degree. So I did that online. And I chose to do that, by the way, 6 months after my children were born. So I'm coaching high school basketball for very little money. We've got 6-month-old newborn twins at home, and I'm doing online school. It was, if you see this action, this was not here before my children were born. And it's not just because of my children. It was.
Hey, I wear a hat for a reason. Trust me.
Okay.
I get that side of things. So
yeah,
I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
I've showed people pictures of me because I'm like, no, like, you don't believe this. And they look at it like they almost saw a ghost. Like there are gasping responses. Like, oh my gosh, like, you look like a living human being. Yeah, it was different. But so I went back and I did my degree, which turns out I had really like avoided a lot of people at college while I was at college, and had like 50% of 3 degrees, but had a lot of work to do towards any one of them still. So that took a while. But in the process of applying to colleges, I applied to the assistant position at Bristol Community College, at JUCO up in Massachusetts, near there. And I got it the first time that I applied. I got it, and that was exciting. And I was still at Sturgis West at the time, where I was running my own program. And the question was, did I want to make less money to do more work? How is that going to affect my path?
Absolutely.
Being in charge and being able to run my program is very important to me, if I'm honest. I have never been an assistant coach to this point. I have not taken that path deliberately. Especially now that I have kids, I find that especially important to me because I need to be able to have my schedule. I didn't want to end up working for, with respect, an older coach who maybe hasn't embraced technology as much and thinks that their recruiting still has to be done 100% in person. It doesn't, in my opinion, and we can do better, reach more people, and that's neither here nor there, but it was part of that mentality. So I get this job and I think about it for a little bit, and I don't know that I thought the program was in the right place to really develop my career the way that I thought that I wanted it to be. And I didn't know that if the coach that was there left for whatever reason, that they would look to promote from within. I had a feeling this was going to be a clean house situation. That coach was gone after a year. And I applied for that job again, didn't get it that time. They gave it to someone else. He was there for a year or for 2 years. And then that job, and that's when I got the Wareham job. And the 2 years came up and that job opened up again and I applied for it again. And that time I got it. And it was sad to have to leave the Wareham situation because, again, honestly, so convenient. Like, it was 3 minutes from my house.
Sure. Yeah.
We had just started building something, and my plan wasn't to leave so quickly. So I took the Bristol job, and that one tried me. That one tried.
I'm sure.
That was a school that what the AD that's there right now, Brian Fernandez, was the men's basketball coach, just taking over the men's side of things too. Their former men's coach had gotten promoted within the school to a larger position, and he, no longer had the time to do the men's basketball thing. Highly successful men's basketball program over there. And Brian was taking over. And so it was a new position for him and a new place for me. And Brian was my sanity while I was there. Brian Fernandez was my sanity while I was there. He was another one of those people who just kept me, more than in any other place, honestly. My sanity was tested there as a coach in a way that it had not been yet. And Brian was the person who day in and day out was just supportive in a way that I'll never forget. Honestly, I don't know if he knows this. I had gotten to a point where I was like, am I going to stop coaching? Because I'm not making any headway here moving up in New England. And I don't think this school in general wants sports. I don't think Bristol wants to have sports. It was a tough place to be, and things went in a different direction. But Brian was just, and now that he's the AD there, I can't speak to what's going on there today. I assume it's better because Brian cares too much for it not to be. But I also learned something tremendous over those two experiences at Wareham and at Bristol, having transitioned to the women's side of things, was that, the pool of players is significantly smaller. Significantly smaller. At Wareham, we had 12 players, like I said, counting 8th graders. The boys team had varsity JV freshmen, and they made cuts. At Bristol, Brian had 20 guys on his team and made cuts. I had 8. And we were pulling soccer players. It was,
was a struggle.
So that was eye-opening in getting to this point too, where we're recruiting from the women's side of things, and we understand the pool is just smaller. We don't have the same amount of people to pull from on the women's side of the sport as the men's side does, which makes the recruiting a little harder. But it's something known going in at this point and not a surprise. I'm sorry. I've been talking for a while and I feel like I'm losing my voice. Just getting over being sick, and my voice is not great.
Oh, no. Hey, you're good. I was the same way. I don't
know if I've answered your question or if I haven't answered it or if I've answered it 20 minutes ago and I'm still just going, honestly.
No, you're good. No, you did answer, right? And then obviously from Bristol, right, you took the opportunity to, now you're at Agnes Scott. So you did answer it. Yes, for sure. Absolutely. You did tell me your timeline. And that's exactly what I asked. No, so you're good. And I do want to just touch real quick on, and it's not really an answer, but I just wanted to say how important it is that an AD supports you and your vision and your program's vision on the level of letting you kind of take your own reins, if you would, without really micromanaging, right? I think that obviously if you need to be micromanaged because there's problematic issues and things like that, right? Like that's if it's warranted, then of course it's different. But if you're doing everything you can, there's no problems within quote unquote HR, and you're doing everything to get girls out or men, and you're doing everything you can to build your program. I think it's very important that you have those free reins, if you would, obviously to an extent, to build your vision and to grow in the ways that you are looking to grow as a program. So I really like that you felt that way, and that really helped you kind of, like you said, make mistakes or run it how you want, right? And that's an amazing feat for sure. And I'm glad that you brought up the recruiting process though, because that is a question I like to ask at least a little bit, right? It's talk a little bit about how you recruit and everything. So you had the opportunity to go from obviously high school to a 2-year school to a 4-year school. And obviously at Bristol, it's a co-ed school, right? Boys and girls. And at Agnes is an all girls school. So I guess in general, what were some of I know you said one of the biggest challenges was like the pool of athletes you can grab or look into, but on the recruiting side, this is a two-parter for you. One is, where are you looking and how are you looking for athletes, and kind of what are you, looking for, I guess is the best way to answer it. But I guess, yeah, like where are you looking at locally, regionally, nationally? What are you looking for in those athletes? And then what were some of the challenges outside of the pool grab that you might not even have as many challenges going from a 2-year to 4-year because you don't have such a revolving door. But what are some of the challenges maybe going from that 2-year school to a 4-year school, and maybe even all girls school? What are some of the challenges you might have faced doing that when it comes to recruiting for you?
Yeah. I'm not gonna remember what you asked, but I like by the time I get to what I'm supposed to be answering, yeah. But it's definitely different, honestly. The JUCO piece was difficult because, again, that smaller pool, there are just fewer girls, and we're D3 JUCO, so you're not even offering anybody a scholarship at that point in time. So there's just there are so few that are in that pool that want to be there. They have to have a grade issue. If they're good enough to play at Division III, they're probably going to end up at one of the state schools, and so you're not. Like the guys' side has, those kids who are outstanding athletes, maybe even great basketball players, but their grades got screwed up, or they got injured and they got D2 offers, but they think they might be a D1 player, or they got D3 offers, but they think they're a scholarship player. For the JUCO side of things, like the pool is just so small. I still wonder who that is. Now, the benefit for them now over there is that the state went to giving free tuition to everyone for community college. So now anyone who wants to attend, it was a smaller tuition in the first place, but it was still people who were having to pay money to go to school, and now that's no longer the case. So I'm hoping that benefits them. For us here, one of the big challenges, the all-women's college piece is a bit of a challenge, though most of the people we talk to, it's the people we don't talk to who have a bigger problem with it than the people we talk to. Because I think once we have the conversation, well, first of all, I think the idea of an all-women's college gets conflated with the idea of an all-girls high school, and they're very different, especially here. We're not a religious school. We're not keeping men off of campus. We're not doing it as a way of controlling things. It's just that as an all-women's college, men aren't going to be a part of your academic experience outside of being teachers and stuff. So, which I push as a benefit, because this is where I lean on, hey, so I was a teenage boy, and they're terrible. They're awful. 19, 20-year-old boys are the worst. You don't want to deal with that every single day. It's nice. You can still go interact with them, but you don't have to have it.
You won't have a distraction.
Yeah. And understandably so. I get it. I would think it would be a benefit, to be honest. But just the idea that men aren't going to be kicked out of your life, but it's just not going to be part of your day-to-day academic experience. The other piece of that too for us is we're going to school in the city without being in the city. We're a direct neighbor of Atlanta. We border Atlanta, and so we have a school. I'm not going to name names of schools right now because I'm not out here trying to promote these other schools, but we have a school that's 15 minutes away that has 15,000 students. We have a school that's 15 minutes away in the other direction that has 40-something thousand students. We have 3 HBCUs in the city of Atlanta and all that their campus life offers. We have the ability to have the flexibility of experience here that if it's Kaysen I'm talking to, for instance, it's going to be Kaysen's Agnes experience, not the Agnes experience.
Yeah.
You want a quieter campus? Here you are. Like in our campus, like I say, like going to school in the city without being in the city, our campus is gorgeous. Our campus, they shoot movies on. Like they've shot 56 shows and movies on campus here. One girl said to me, we always ask, what are you looking for in your experience? What's the vision look like when you think about, your college experience? And she said, I want the experience you see in film and TV. And I said, great news for you. We're literally that experience. Like they just finished shooting a movie here in November. They shot a Hulu series here the last 2 years. They've shot Marvel series here. Like it's when you think of what a college looks like, we're what that is. It's a gorgeous campus. But then you are 10-minute walk to Decatur Square and all that it has to offer, which is tons of food, Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, Dairy Queen, all the local restaurants. And then there's a MARTA station that can get you into Atlanta, which is the transit station system for Atlanta, or you can just drive to Atlanta. It's 15 minutes down the road. You have to take 2 turns to get to Mercedes-Benz, to get to State Farm, to get to Aquarium, to get to all of the things under the sun that Atlanta has to offer. We're not a hard sell in my mind. I just collectively don't think the school has done a great job of doing that. The other piece for me that I think has been a struggle for us and who we're looking to recruit from, I think we're looking to recruit nationally because we haven't been. I think that we've been operating more like we're a commuter school for some reason. Like we need to get these kids, or we're like a state school. There's no in-state, out-of-state tuition. It's expensive here, period. But when you talk about expensive, it's a relative number or that's a relative term. Where I just came from, this school, there would be a line around the block to attend if it cost this much in New England. This school costs $20,000 to $30,000 more in New England. Now, how do we connect with those New England girls and get them to understand we're going to give you this extraordinarily valuable academic and campus life experience, and it's going to cost you like it's going to cost you $80,000 less over your 4 years here. And you can still have everything you want. And also the airport is 20 minutes away and it's the busiest airport in the country. It's very easy to get in and out of, back to Boston, back to Hartford, back to New York, back to wherever it is that you're going.
Of course,
So for us, I think, or even from the West Coast too, this school would cost another like $90,000 in California. For us, a big piece of it, though, is because of how unique the school is, how different it is. Being on campus is such an important experience to making decisions. And so we're trying to struggle we're not trying to struggle. We are struggling trying to figure out how to make that work for us because we're a Division III all-women's school. We have 6 programs. We don't have football. We don't have a ton of money athletically here. Our program isn't flush with cash that I can fly 20 girls in for visits.
And D3 is one of those things anyways that you kind of struggle with fighting with some of the other schools just because you are a D3, so you have to find other ways to give money out regardless if you have money or not, because of athletics versus non. So, I mean, I think that not that – I know some D3 struggle more than others, but I think that that's an uphill fight that you have to fight against, especially if you're facing a girl who wants to go D2 or whatever, right? I think that's a battle you have to – combat anyways, just knowing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the landscape is different down here. I didn't realize that until I got here. There are very few Division IIIs in the South in general. New England is it's Division IIIs full of everywhere. Like you can't throw a rock and not have one bounce off another one. Like it's I just found out in the last couple of months that Florida has 0 Division III schools. South Carolina has 0 Division III schools. They're all either bigger or NAIA. And I think we have like 1 NAIA school in New England, period. It's a very different landscape. So, they operate under different rules. They operate under different expectations than we do. And it makes the playing field a little bit different and harder to manage because of that. So again, that idea of trying to connect with people from further away who understand the Division III experience and who have the ability to play it and who also I think there's a moral responsibility as a Division III coach as well. Honestly, the idea of what are we asking of these players when they come to us? Like, am I going to ask you to pay $65,000 a year, which is a sticker price number for us? I'm going to be very honest. We give away a $25,000 academic scholarship to every single person who gets in here, minimum. So, but our sticker price this year is $65,000. So all in. That's everything. Am I going to ask a girl to pay $65,000 to never have a chance to play basketball? I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in that position. It's not what I'm here for, to that point, I think too. And, I got derailed and all the other things I was talking about, but when finishing my journey to here, Dr. Richardson, Kanika Richardson, my AD here, she believed in the vision. She said, she gave me the opportunity. I applied here. I got hired here before the season started, but I was in Massachusetts. I own a house. I got a wife, 2 kids, 2 dogs. I told her I'm not going to be there when the season starts. If that's something you want to be able to talk about, we can do that. But there's no way I'm going to be there. I'm not one of these people who could just pick up and leave my family for X amount of time.
Absolutely.
I would have been a disaster. So she said, okay, like, can you get here by the end of the year? And I was like, I think we can do it. And in retrospect, especially going through Time Hop over this past year, watching the amount of time from when I first came here for my visit and watching us prepare to sell the house in like 6 weeks and get it sold was insane. And then packed and moved is crazy. I do not know how we did it. But having that opportunity to have her say, she said, we want you long-term. Like, if it was about this year, we would have hired somebody already. Like, this is about getting somebody in here who has a vision to build something that we want to be a part of. And that understanding of what my vision is and her vision and how they connect and what kind of freedom I'm allowed to do my job with because of that is a huge piece of what we're doing here. So it's honestly just I'm having this moment where I realize I know there was a point I was saying that, but I don't know what the point was now.
No, you're good.
No, I love it. I love that you have that you have. For one, I love that you dive into things, and I know that we go off tangents, but I love that you have so much. You could tell there's a lot of passion there, and just in the experience from where you started to, even just the last year or 2 years, 3 years of going from the high school to I guess you started there in like the COVID year, but in general, like the last 5 years, let's just say that you can tell that there's such a big passion in where you got from that point to now, and the opportunity and what you and your wife and your family are able to overcome, if you would, right? Or maybe not overcome, but the transition of what you guys had to go through, if you would, to where you're at now. It's one of those things where you can tell, like, hey, I just moved my whole family, so I'm gonna make sure that this works, right, and do my best to make sure it works. So I feel that, right, and one of my goals is to get to the next level in Coach College, and that's something that I've already had that conversation with, and I know that if and when that time comes, we're gonna have to do the same thing. So I personally appreciate that, because you can just tell that you have such a appreciation, if you would, for what you had to go through or what you've done, right? I guess you could say in your timeline. So you've definitely answered every question, and I have one more recruiting question for you before we get into like the final 2 or 3 questions about the coaching side of things, like philosophy-wise. But I think it's important to understand, right? And I'm going to ask this question maybe if we get you on again about like the interview process, because I've always been curious about like interviewing, like you're going from high school to college, like what do you understand? So that's a question I'll do episode 2 if we get you on again, if you choose to. But I do have a question about the like the developing your recruiting process. So obviously you didn't have a recruiting process as an athlete, so there's not a lot to pull from there, but you had a chance to go from obviously at the JUCO level to now, right? And then you've obviously had a chance to talk to a bunch of different coaches from clinics or personally. So how did you kind of build your recruiting process, or develop it, I should say, even though you didn't have a personal experience? And then how did you develop it to where you can find success in it without maybe a whole lot of maybe assistant coaching, I should say, like seeing it in the flesh, if you would? So I guess answer it. Yeah. I mean, how did you develop it knowing that those 2 things might not have had a direct impact on how you do it?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. It never was really a question for me, if I'm honest. Another one of those things maybe I was too stupid to think about are like so my first assistant coach slash JV coach at Sturgis West, at my first head coaching high school job, Sal Mondello, another, like, again, transformational person in my coaching experience. His son was actually on the team as well, and great player, Mike Mondello. Now, like, professional snowboarder and snowboard instructor, and lives a very different life, and he loves it. Sal used to be a Division III assistant at UMass Dartmouth back in the 80s. And I don't want to screw up exactly what they did. They either made the Final Four or they won the national championship. I can't remember which one it was, but they were incredibly successful. So Sal's been a part of a very successful coaching program and staff for decades to this point. And he came in and he just, again, he allowed me to do my thing and supported me in the background, and, helped me have that confidence really to find my voice early in this. He could have been somebody who's been like, I did this, like, my kid's on the team, here's what you should do. He didn't. He never did. And Sal, though, was having had that experience. Sal was a person who got me in opened some doors for me to talk to some people as well. But Sal was always like, man, you're going to be great at recruiting. Like, the way you talk to the kids, like, you're going to be great at recruiting. Like, he always instilled that belief in me that the way I connect with my players was going to translate to recruiting. And so with recruiting, a big piece of it is just honesty with me. Like, I'm not trying to sell anybody on anything. I'm going to tell you who we are. I'm going to tell you what this experience is like. You're going to get, probably, as you can probably tell at this point in this conversation, you're going to get more information than you probably wanted to get, but you're going to get all the information that you asked for, or that you didn't know you needed to ask for, but you're going to get it all. And for us, we talk about this with every one of our recruits. We're looking for that sense of belonging. We're looking for people who feel like they belong here. I don't want good basketball players. I don't want good students. I don't want good people. I want a combination of the three, and I want them to feel like this is the place they want to be. That's important to me in general, but I think it's especially important here at Agnes because it's a unique experience here. It is a different place. Because of that, like, the situation I find myself in currently, I got here last year. There were 9 players on the team. One of those players was a soccer player who had never played basketball before, who was the 9th player on the roster. We find ourselves with 10. I have 10 players on my team this year. I have 3 seniors. I have 0 juniors. I have 1 sophomore. I don't know that belonging was a huge piece of the recruiting puzzle here before. I think it was, whoever comes. And there's a certain, especially at Division III, like I said, the pool is smaller. There's a reason for that. I get that. But it's also put us in a position where, like, I have a class with no players in it, and I have a class with 1 player in it after that. We have to do better at finding, and it's not that they didn't have anybody in those classes. They're just all gone at this point. They've all transferred. So for us, it's how do we find people who want to be here for 4 years? How do we find people who connect with what the program is? Well, I always tell them, you got to connect with me too, because we spend too much time together for you to not want to be a part of what I'm doing. Like, we're going to talk way too much over these next 4 years for you to be just like, this guy again.
Yeah, coach.
Like, the short version of it is we're looking for people who don't suck. If I'm honest, like, I need people that I want to be around, and they want to be around us, because this is just to do this the way we want to. We need to be excited to be around each other. Like, we need to.
Yep.
You have to be able to jump in and feel like you're part of the family in all aspects. But hopefully, it's hard to say because I guess there is family turmoil, but a good side of it, right? Like a good connection, between everybody, and have good character with who you are as a person to come in. So I understand.
And we talk about that. I tell them that I'm very honest in my recruiting. I'm very honest with my players. I don't lie to them. I feel pretty confident. I've never lied to my players, And to the point that it really took my team last year by surprise when we went and played our first game against a very, very good team last year, Barry College. And we go to Barry. It's like an hour and a half away. And we get there, and they're getting ready in the locker room. And I come in to talk to them before the game, and I'm like, all right, so there's zero expectation that you're going to win today. Like, let's get that out of the way. Like, we are not going to win this game today. And they were like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that. Like, we're not. Like, let's be honest about this. This game is not about us winning. That team is miles ahead of who and what we are. I have been here for 5 days before this game. Like, we are not going to win this game today. That is not my expectation. It should not be your expectation. So let's focus on the little things today and how we can focus on small wins. Like, how do we learn more about who we are, how you are as players, what we're trying to do as a system, and where do we go going forward from here? So there's that, like, it's not brutal honesty, but like I'm very honest. And I tell every one of my recruits, if X is the reason you connect with us, don't come here. It's not going to work for you. And we don't want that. Like, if you connect with everything, like, this will be a great thing for you. But if it's the only thing that you connect with, don't come here. Like, it's not going to be
tough.
So just that honesty. And I think that honesty builds trust almost immediately with our recruits. And then in turn, as they come into the door, like, you're going to have an experience where you feel seen. I feel like you feel understood. You may not agree with my decisions, but you're going to understand them. I don't keep things from people. So I think that is just that. It's the honesty piece of it for me, and that belonging. Those are the two crucial things for us, and that's how I develop my thing, because that's the situation I want us to be a part of.
Absolutely. And that actually transitions pretty well into kind of the final few questions about, like, the coaching philosophy. So I'm going to ask you, so how do you build a successful culture on a level of buy-in and or mindset?
Oh, I don't even know if I can answer that well, to be honest. I think that the biggest piece of it in my mind, because we're still building things, and like I said, I was at Bristol for 2 years, and they were, I'll be honest, a disaster. And I was at Wareham for 2 years before that, so I got to go all the way back to Sturgis to, like, talk about, a time where I was somewhere for a period where we actually got to see that happen, and really see the fruit of our labor. But it's really making sure the expectation is understood, of what the experience is, of what's being asked of you. I have for a long time stolen from Mike Neighbors, Arkansas women's head coach, the idea of the evidence of excellence and setting expectations versus goals. His story was the idea that when he was at Washington, I don't want to be telling other people's stories, so this will be quick. But when he was at Washington, he had a really good team, and they thought they could, go far into the NCAA tournament. But going into the season, their goal was to make the NCAA tournament, and they made it. And I think they got beat in the first or the second round, and by a team he feels like they should have beat. And everybody was very happy that they, accomplished their goal. And so they went back to the drawing board with the idea of goals and set the idea of expectations and that evidence of excellence, and setting categories of, like, this is like a Hall of Fame level effort. This is a, like, letter winning effort. This will keep you on the team. This is what will get you kicked off, and this was what will get you forgotten, that sort of thing. So, like, for everything, like, how are we in the classroom? This is what it looks like for each one of those categories in the classroom. This is what it looks like by way of our communication. This is what it looks like for practice. This is what it looks like for game day prep. So it's like 30 different categories, give or take.
Yeah.
We're trying to set that expectation. And I'm honest too, like, I have input from my team on that. Like, what do you think this looks like? And we have a very young team right now, so a lot of that came from me this year. But as we go forward and continue to develop it here, like, it will be a thing that is entirely created by our team. They will have a strong say in what this experience is. And that'll be because they do understand what it is, and they know what they want it to be. And right now with my freshmen, we're having that question. I've asked it multiple times this week. What do you want this to be? We're in a position where currently we're light on bodies. And there are some of our more senior players and better players that are out. And I have 6 freshmen and all 6 of my freshmen are healthy, and I played with 7 players in my last game, and I may have 7 on Saturday or on Friday this week, and again, 6 of them being freshmen. What do you want this to be? Like I said, I have 3 seniors, no juniors, 1 sophomore. It's your team. Like, make it your thing now. Don't wait for someone else to hand it to you. Like, come in here and take this and make it yours. What do you want this to be? And I think we've had a pretty good week, especially coming back out of break this week at practice, where I feel like I see our freshmen starting to assert themselves more. And I don't just mean like being more aggressive with the ball or anything like that, but just really stepping up as teammates a bit more. I wouldn't entirely say leadership just yet, but leaning towards leadership, like trending in that direction. I think we have the potential to have some excellent leaders in this freshman class. It's just getting them to realize that they have an opportunity to do it, and do they want to take charge of that and take hold of it? And if so, what does that look like? Because some of these kids, too, they come from a program that the basketball maybe wasn't great, so they were a good player, but like they have a lot of gaps in their knowledge. Or they come from a team where it was a good basketball program, but the experience was terrible, and they don't know what it looks like to be a good leader. So we have, a lot of conversations about that. But yeah, I think I think part of it too, and that honesty of our recruiting is just finding those people who connect with what we're doing, and in doing so, we're not having to try to change anyone's mind to get in line with what we expect. We're hopefully bringing in those people who have that expectation. But having the few that are here still that we didn't recruit, if I'm honest, one of them, she tries me on a daily basis. And not like she's trying to. It's just who she is. Like she's got a lot of growing up and learning to do. And we've had some conversations about her this week that have been fun, not fun. But it's the idea there too is that we can help these kids when they're in our program, and we can't when they're gone.
Yeah,
so
of course.
It's not about letting people off the hook. It's not about giving people a free pass, but it's about allowing even these 20-year-olds, these 22-year-olds, they're still kids, like letting them make mistakes and trying to help them learn how to do better and holding them accountable for it without sending them out the door and saying, life will be easier without you. So, bringing them into line is more of the thing, but it's not, that sounds harsher than it is. Like, it's really just,
you have to develop. Yeah.
They have to understand what the expectation is, and it's different than what it was before we got here,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just part of any program you build. You have to set expectations and as you said, kind of allow them to be a piece of it, especially if you have a young team, right? It's going to be the way that it's going to be the future, not only for them, but as you go and as you develop these young athletes. If you have 6, as you said, you have 301, and then the other number, which is I guess 6. They have to kind of take a piece of it and run with it, and they have to kind of understand as a team what their goal is and collectively come together, obviously within reasons. And I think that's how the culture and obviously the success of that program will eventually get to, by doing that from a young age. Can't wait till the senior years or whatever, as you said. So I definitely agree. So my final question for you, my favorite question. It's not my final. I have one more fun question at the end.
Okay.
I like to always end with, but my final coaching philosophy question for you, is so it's the name of the podcast. It's why do you coach? What's your coach's why?
It's a great question. It's when I saw the name of the podcast too, I was like, oh, that's a good one. I like that. Like that's something that makes sense. I don't think anybody is tuning in for the first, oh my God, hour 20 of this to get to this point from me, to be honest, if I'm honest. But
you'd be surprised. There's some people who listen to the whole thing. You just so you know.
They can find me on Twitter and let me know they listened to the whole thing if they did. Honestly. The why for me is, and it's a great question. I have a stack of papers here asking my players about why do they do this, and it's not me like questioning them like as if I'm angry about it. Like, tell me why you're still here. Like, but what is it that brought you to this? Why do you do this? I think it's important that they keep that at the forefront of their minds in this experience. You know, the other day we talked to them about the idea of like your college basketball players. I would imagine every single one of you, at least at one point in your life, has had a dream of being a college basketball player. It is here. Embrace it. Like, be a part of it. Like, tell yourself you did it. So for me, my why, though, is I want to have an impact on the lives of people and help them grow and develop off the court even more than on the court. You know, like I said, when I first got into coaching, I watched my cousin's experience be subpar. And I came to it with that idea of wanting to do the basketball side of it. And that has always been a better part. I've always been better at the understanding of basketball than the playing of basketball. It's, you know, those who can't sort of thing. So the basketball side of things, never really a question for me. It was that experience of having to teach basketball and teach those third and fourth graders that transformed me into someone who wanted to now have a experience in just really getting a chance to develop young kids and teenagers and now high school and college kids. You know, I've had some good coaching experiences, but I've also had some bad coaching experiences. And I think that while I am fond of our profession in general, there are some people who are held in the highest esteem at the highest levels who I don't think do the job very well from a people perspective. That they are result oriented, and at a certain point in time, the job has to have a result or you don't have the job, and I understand that. But there are people who are out there, you know, actively recruiting people who they don't care about. Like, they don't care about them as a person. And I don't even mean just that individual person they don't care about. They don't, like, their values that they've openly espoused don't align with the lifestyles and the values of the people that they're recruiting. And they still will go out there and speak almost against their players effectively. And I don't like that. And I want to be someone who is there to give however many people I have a chance to connect with and touch base with and have an impact on, to have a different experience, to have hopefully a transformational experience. I don't think we're the leading cause of where these kids end up in life, but we get to have an impact. And I try to make as much of that time that we have and try to make as much of an impact as we can. We do yoga with my team at the end of every practice. One, I think it's really valuable for us recovery-wise. Two, they don't like it. And that's kind of the reason why. It's not hard. It's just asking them to do something that they're uncomfortable with.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Asking them to stretch themselves a little bit further and, you know, expand their minds a little bit. This week, for the first time, I asked them to do an inverted pose. I had them do a shoulder stand. They're upside down for the first time. We did it 2 days ago. Boy, the looks on their faces when I showed it to them. They were like, "What are you trying to do to us?" And then some of them right away started trying it. And some of them didn't. And then some of them did. And I had them try it again yesterday. And some of them I saw went back and tried it at home afterwards, after practice yesterday. You could see that they went back and tried. They were like, "Okay, I'm going to get this." And some of them who were even afraid to go upside down, day one day, and it's just for like a split second, but it was like, that's a moment to celebrate that. That is a moment of growth for you. Like,
Absolutely.
How do we help you to grow? That's why I do this. I do love the competing. I do love the X's and O's, but the reason I'm still doing it and the reason I'm doing it at this level is the people part of it. It's always that at the forefront for me. How do we create an experience that is beneficial as a basketball experience, but also as a life experience for the players that we have in our program? And how can we expand that reach to as many people as we can connect with and touch as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. You see the growth in these kids and be a positive impact and have a impact on their life. Be that positive person that like as you said about your cousin, being that person that they actually can enjoy the sport doing and have a positive role model in really any facet of it is important. So I agree. I love it. So I appreciate you jumping on here. It's been an amazing episode. I love it. I love that you dove into a lot of different things that I think are going to be beneficial not only for myself but anybody who's listening to this, as well as hopefully yourself as you look back at it in the future. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd love to have you come back on again. But the next time we'll dive back into more of like the behind the scenes schematics. You don't have to give away too much sauce or too much stuff, but a little bit more about like your day to day, how you develop your kids, right? Maybe more of the mental or like the true coaching side of things, not just the philosophies and stuff. So I'd love to dive into that with you. So if you ever get a wild hair and you want to jump back on here, I'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great. So my final question for you, more of the fun side of things. I know you said you grew up in Massachusetts, or grew up in Connecticut, Massachusetts area, the whole New England, I should say, and you spent most of your life there. And I know basketball, and obviously there's some other sports up there that really have a presence. So I'm going to ask you this on the general terms. You can be biased or you can be non-biased. But I like to ask this question just because I think if coaches listen to this, I like to have a little bit maybe of a debate, right, as they go. I've heard some wild stuff on some sports, so this is going to be a question for you. What state produces the best high school girls basketball?
Ooh, girls. Oh.
Because you're a girls coach, I have to keep it there.
I mean, I'll be honest, Georgia really cranks out basketball players like on both sides in a way that I really didn't even have a firm grasp on until I got here. And then you look back and you're like, oh man, look at all the WNBA players, look at all the NBA players who are from the Atlanta area, in particular. It kind of makes it difficult if we're honest here because there are a lot of really, really talented players here who have a lot of national attention on them. They've got the number one player in the country. No, I can't remember if she's 25 or 26, and so I won't name her because I don't want to look that stupid. But we've got just outstanding players in this state. But California always does great. With respect to Connecticut, we do a great job in Connecticut of getting the best players from other states to come to Connecticut to go to UConn.
Yeah.
But not always cranking them out in Connecticut. It's such a small state. But there have been some gems out of there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I might be biased today because of my Georgia experience here, but the top tier of the players down here is just outstanding. Outstanding. They are. Honestly, there are some girls who I think have gotten other girls scholarships. I don't think those other girls maybe were scholarship level players. They have looked really good playing with some really good players.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's say Georgia.
So Georgia it is. Okay. All right, I'll take it. I like it. And obviously, I didn't really mention this with you, but I have mentioned this to other basketball coaches, specifically on the girls' side, is WNBA and some of the things you're mentioning about like the visuals and I guess the sport of women's basketball has obviously made such a huge leap the last 2 years with Caitlin Clark and some of those things, right? So the fact that I don't know if this really relates to the best states on the level of like Georgia, but I do think that women's basketball, I shouldn't say just girls, women's basketball as a whole is in a really good place right now, right? And in a lot of areas, whether it's visuals or I should say viewership or development of girls because of and the growth maybe of the girls basketball. I know it's already big. Right? I know every school pretty much if they have a boys program, they have a girls program. But the idea is that women's basketball is in a really good place right now, as well as all women's sports, I think. And development in the sport is at an all-time high. So I don't know if that's really related to being Georgia, but I think that maybe since Georgia has such a sport. And maybe it's always been this way. Maybe I know you said you didn't really notice it till you came down here, but I guess you could say I think the last year or two is kind of where I was getting at. I think that because of the growth in the higher levels, right, Iowa and obviously Ken Clark and all this stuff has really helped maybe find some of these areas, like you said, like Georgia or Texas, have really kind of maybe had more eyes on them for the sport, I guess is what I'm getting at. And so that's really helped, as you said, maybe some girls weren't supposed to get scholarships, but they did, or whatever, has really kind of been the reason, I shouldn't say maybe the reason, but maybe had an influence because of the growth at the highest level. It's trickled down to maybe like college coaches looking in particular areas that has helped, I guess, grow the sport maybe more than it might have been 4 or 5 years ago. And maybe had more opportunities for girls to go to the next level because of that as well. I don't know. I think I just ranted on Caitlin Clark because I think she needs her props, but I think that it all trickles down. It's kind of the idea of what I'm mentioning right now. It all kind of trickles down to all the way down to youth with development and stuff like that, as well as eyes on women at a young age for the opportunity to go to whatever levels.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I say that I think that the pool for women's sports right now in high school and turning college is smaller, I think that in the coming generation, that number is going to rebound and come back up again because of the explosion in television more so of women's sports. And I was at an NCAA coaching event in March, and the Fever were playing a preseason game against the Dream, ironically enough, while I was up there. So I was like, oh, I'll go check it out. 13,000 people at a women's preseason basketball game. I was just like, holy cow. And then I took my team to when Caitlin Clark came to play here, and the Dream play at another stadium or another arena for their regular home games, but they played at State Farm for the Fever game, and the whole place is sold out. And it's just like, this is crazy. This is fantastic. And it's, for us, we're really trying to tie into the community with that too. We live in a really exciting community here where there's a lot of young families with young kids who want to, have that experience. We have a semi-pro soccer team in the summer that had 2,000 people a game coming out and paying money for tickets to come watch basically summer league college soccer. And so for us, we're really trying to connect with this community and tell people, hey, we're here. It's shocking how many people in the area know about the school, don't know we have sports, and let them know, we've got a really exciting thing coming and happening here, and you can come be a part of it, and we'd love to have you. And I like that piece of the women's side of things. I like that. Not that the women's side hasn't been seen. I'm not saying I like that. I like where it is right now. I like that it feels organic at the moment still. I like that it feels like grassrootsy still, that you can really have this impact, a granular impact that you can see the results of right now. And, it's not just you counting billions of dollars at this point. Absolutely. Or it's pretty cool. And it's exciting, honestly. It's an exciting time to be a part of it. And when we come back, we'll talk about whether or not I should be coaching women's sports, because I've had that conversation as well. And I've had that conversation with some women in my life in the sports field. And I say, hey, should men be coaching women's sports still? Their answer so far has been collectively yes. But honestly, it's a question I keep coming back and asking myself.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're going to put it on the schedule for sure. After season's done, maybe we'll touch base again in the summer, and we'll see where you're at and maybe get a little bit more free time. Because I'd love to have you back. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I appreciate you jumping on here today. If you guys are still listening to this podcast, thank you guys so much. I couldn't do this without you getting coaches on here. You guys listening, it really drives me to keep going. So I really appreciate you guys who are watching and listening to this. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in the next one. Coach, we'll see you next time as well. Thank you guys so much. Peace.